PC Taff Edwards. Taff is based at Corbett's Tay Road and works on crime follow-up and prevention. But he was on the Queen's Diamond Jubilee Awards list last year, and in November was awarded an MBE at Buckingham Palace. And today, I'm not quite sure what he's going to talk about. It's a charity which is close to home, so he told me.
Thank you very much. Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for inviting me here today, and especially to my ex-governor, Mr. Leader, who was, used to be my boss at Forest Gates a long time ago. Thank you very much for inviting me.
I wonder why you had a shifty look.
Well, 27 years down the line after last meeting him, I'm sat in his house saying, I'm sure I know you from somewhere. And I was correct. I know I've got 20 minutes, so I'm going to start my stopwatch. But if I do overrun, please tell me, and I will shut up. About 7 years ago, I went into a late turn at Harold Hill, and I logged onto the internet and I read about two of my colleagues, Yvonne and Richard Brown, and they were both detective sergeants in Barnet Borough. Didn't know them, but I read about a little boy called Jack Brown, and that sort of struck home to me because I've got a little boy called Jack, same age as this other little boy called Jack. And Jack was suffering from a cancer called neuroblastoma, which is a childhood cancer that affects 300 children a year in this country. And it's a cancer of the nervous system and affects the brain. There's no curative option in the United Kingdom, and children were having to go to America, specifically New York, to a marvellous hospital called Sloan Kettering, to get treatment, either for curative or to prolong their life, but it was very hit and miss. But kids in this country, they had to pay for it. So Richard and Yvonne had to raise $1 million in order not to sell their house. Now they were very fortunate because they had the massive machine called the Metropolitan Police Service behind them, and consequently were able to raise, or be on the way to raise money to pay for Jack's airfare and the bed in the hospital and the tablets, etc. So I came away from that. I'm not ashamed to say I was in tears because it really struck home to me. And I picked up the phone and donated 50 quid, as you do. I thought that made me feel a bit better. Well, it did. It made me feel better for half an hour. So that night, I went down to a local watering hole in Brentwood, and after about 8 pints, along with another colleague.
You got in the car?
I did actually. With a bit of bravado, myself and a colleague called Chris, he's got children as well, and we said, what are we going to do? Let's run the New York Marathon. And the next day, we both looked at each other and said, did we actually decide on that? So yes, we did. So long story cut short, 3-4 months later, we were on a 747 into JFK, and we are in half uniform, shirt, top hat, tie, epaulets, running 26 point whatever it is miles through the streets of New York City. And we raised what I thought was a massive amount, 4,000 quid, until I then went to a pharmacy in New York to get some tablets for Jack, who was being treated at Great Ormond Street at this time, and UCL in London, and I had to hand over $1,000. And I could have smacked the pharmacist in the face because I'd just run 26 miles, yeah, for this box of tablets. And Chris and I said, we've got to do something much more than this, because this is out of order. So 6 months later, 16 of us, including one of our assistant commissioners, we went back to New York, and using some contacts, we decided to do a bike ride, and we rode on police, the bikes that you see us riding on the streets, those tractors. Yeah, we took 16 of those to New York, and we rode 220 miles from New York to Rhode Island. And we had some police connections in Rhode Island after another drunken night, but I won't go into that. And we raised, between us, £76,000 for Jack's treatment. Again, a drop in the ocean when you think about how much they needed to raise. But the good news was that we raised more than sufficient money for Jack's treatment. Sadly, Jack is no longer with us, but because of the monies that we raised and the awareness, it added 4 years onto his life, and they had really good quality life. A lot of it spent in New York. So we decided, right, let's carry this on. Let's do something in Jack's memory. So we decided to start our own charity, and we now have a charity called JACK, J-A-C-K, Joining Against Cancer in Kids. And my police team are called Jack's Pack, Police Against Cancer in Kids. Once a year, we go out to New York because of the connection with the hospital. And I take between 80 and 100 police officers every year, and we depart this year on May the 16th. And we run a half marathon in Central Park, in uniform from the waist up. And we do a plane pull at Kennedy Airport. We borrow an Airbus from an airline, and we tie her up to the front wheels, and we have a competition to pull an Airbus about 25 metres to see who can pull it the who can pull it the fastest over 25 metres. And we take on the NYPD and the New York State Police and British Airways and American Airlines, and it's just for bragging rights. But all of the officers that go on the trip, they have to commit to raising £350 from friends and family. So before I go, I know that I've got, for example, 100 times 350 quid. So I know I've got 35 grand in the bank before we even set foot on the plane. And whilst we're there, we go to the British consulate and we do a lot of really good bits and pieces. So we raised, up to date, we've raised nearly £500,000 in the last 7 years towards kids' cancer. And that's basically what we do. This year, the trip just gone, and unfortunately, although I organised the trip, as you know, the Olympics took place last summer, and I wasn't able to travel. So I sent the team off, and they came back and raised £42,000 last year, which was tremendous. But the reason I couldn't go last year was because I was really fortunate enough to be selected to be one of the officers that was part of the police security team that protected the Olympic flame and the mother flame when it flew in from Greece. I don't know if you've seen on the telly those fat guys in grey gear. I was one of those fat guys in grey gear. And being, I think I was the second oldest on the team, I give the youngsters a run for their money, but we did an 8,000 mile loop of the United Kingdom. We collected the flame. I was lucky enough to get the mother flame given to me by Princess Anne when that plane landed in Culdrose, and then we took it down to Land's End, and we did an 8,000 mile, 76-day journey around the United Kingdom, coming through all the London boroughs at the end of it. So that's the reason why I couldn't go on the trip last year, because I was preparing for that. Incidentally, I've got the Olympic torch here. If anyone wants photographs of this later on, I will pass this around. This torch is quite special to me because it isn't mine. This torch was actually belongs to Yvonne Brown, Jack's mum, and because of her work with cancer charities, she was nominated for and got a place as a torchbearer when it ran through Edmonton. So this torch carried the Olympic flame through the streets of Edmonton by Jack Brown's mum. So that's a very, very important torch. I don't know if you know any of the history behind this, but there were 8,000 holes in this torch, representing each mile and each torchbearer. So there are 8,000 holes in this torch, including the top and the bottom. It's 800 millimetres long, representing the runners again, and it's 800 grams in weight. Three-sided, which represents the 3 times that London has hosted the Olympic Games, and also 3 sides, which donates the 3 Olympic principles: higher, faster and stronger. And it's a very tactile torch. We had a lot of people that ran in with the Paralympic flame, and also with this one, that could not see. So they were able to get a feel of it through the way in which it was made. It was designed in Bow, in the East End of London. It was actually, the manufacturing of the prototypes, was about 500 metres from my house in Basildon. So this was actually designed not far from my house. And the 8,000 torches were made in Coventry. So every torchbearer that ran was able to buy their torch at the end of it all. There was one little girl that wasn't able to afford it. And I don't know if you remember the Commonwealth Games when we were awarded that. There was a little girl that met David Beckham. And I don't know if you remember that little girl. It was a little dot, and she went on and she had a feeding tube in her nose. And she met the Queen. And that little girl is still alive, and she's in a wheelchair now. But her family are not very well off, and she had to give this torch back at the end of her segment, and I was lucky enough to escort her in Manchester. It was on BBC Breakfast, and she had to give that torch back because she couldn't afford to pay for it. So we had a whip around and we bought it for her. So the next day we got it couriered to her home address, so she had this torch. But I'll pass that around. That's an original. That was carried by Yvonne Brown's, Jack Brown's mum. So
What's the cost?
every runner, if they wanted to purchase it, they had to pay about £180. So it was expensive. But you know, most people bought them. Some people then put them on eBay. There was a lot of controversy about that, but a lot of the people that did put them on eBay and sold them give their money to charity. So a lot of them were sold, and I think it's up to them. It was their torch, they bought it, and if they're raising money for charity, so be it. So that was one of the things that we guarded. And I say, I was very, very lucky to be selected to go on that team. And you've heard my friend here say about MBE. Whilst I was on that journey around the country, I was luckily, it's quite embarrassing, but I was lucky enough to get a phone call to say I've been awarded the MBE. So in November last year, I trotted up to Buckingham Palace with my kids and my wife, and I met Her Majesty, and I was awarded the MBE, which was a bit humbling, because a lot of people I met on that trip, some of the stories, we were very lucky enough to, on certain days when we weren't guarding the runners and the flame, to prepare the torches as the torches were being passed around. They were doing the kiss, and they were able to tell us why they'd been awarded to carry the Olympic torch. And some of the stories that you heard were just humbling, and I thought, well, I don't deserve it, you do. But you know, it was really good to hear their stories. So you know, I've got my own charity now, and that's why I go to New York, and we're trying to find a cure to this disease. It is around the corner, but unfortunately, because it doesn't affect a great deal of children, well, it does, because 300 is 300, it's a lot of children. We can't in this country, there's no curative option, and there's no money for the treatment of it unless we send our children overseas. And as long as we're able to raise the money for that, then we carry on doing it, and we will do it. And every year I get officers queuing up to come and join us and run a half marathon, pull a plane and raise 350 quid. So that's my story, really. Has anyone got any questions?
Yes.
Right, okay.
When you were doing the run around with the escorting the flames,
Yes.
where and how do you sleep? What's the
Right,
arrangement?
very good question. LOCOG, the London Organising Committee for the Olympic Games, although our police team, which included the runners, our cyclists, you saw the SEG yesterday, Special Escort Group, taking Baroness Thatcher's body to the cemetery. We had outriders like that to make sure the convoy got round. So, in answer to your question, we stayed in hotels every night, so we were on the move every day. Every morning we were up at 4 o'clock. We kept the mother flames in Davy lamps, in the Welsh Davy lamps. Yeah, we kept the mother flames were in Davy lamps. We had one mother flame and 6 sub-mother flames, so those were tended to, and we slept with them. We ate, drank and slept with them every night. And I can guarantee you, when it was our duty to have the mother flames in our rooms for whichever night it was, I didn't sleep, because if that flame went out, I know people say, oh, you must have relit it. I can guarantee you that the flame that was handed to me by Princess Anne, that was the one that lit the Olympic flame in Stratford, and that is the God's honest truth. So we moved every day around the country, and we were put in Holiday Inn hotels, but there was a massive machine that got us around, and we give our luggage in, and we saw it the next day or the next evening in the next hotel. Any more? Sorry, Sibash. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, I have got one question, but before I say that, I have seen 2 cases of neuroblastoma in the last 27 years, and both have died, and both with children, 8, 9 years old. And the second question I'm asking, you're so busy doing all these things. When do you work for the police?
Actually, I asked the same question.
I have to say, but my bosses, I've got to be careful because my wife was my boss up until about 6 months ago. She still is, yeah. I do a lot of it in my own time, in my own house. I've got a study with a computer and stuff, but I've got a great team of people around me, about 5 or 6 individuals that I give chunks of it to. It's very difficult to hand over stuff that you've made because I'm not very good at delegating. If I want it done, I do it myself because I know it'll get done properly. But I delegate pieces of work, but the answer is I do a lot of it in my own time.
Just a comment, Taffy. A number of us actually had the privilege of being marshals, did we not? As it came through Havering, you know, and you did look knackered when you went past that. You've been running along.
I can say it wasn't my running day then, but our bosses were very good. They said, "Where do you want to run?" Naturally, I said Swansea, but not Llanelli. It was the wrong side of the bridge. You have to drive on the other side of the road there, and I couldn't understand what they were saying.
I'll see you afterwards.
Yes. Okay. So when I ran through Havering, I got out to the car and I started at Romford Dog Track. And I got back into my vehicle at Rainham Tesco's.
Well, you'd have passed us then because we were at Rainham Tesco's.
I was exhausted, and it was a very sunny day. And later on that day we ran through Basildon, which is where my kids were, and that made it was brilliant.
Lovely.
But I have to say, Havering was breathtaking. The amount of people that were out and supporting those people was absolutely fantastic, and I will never ever forget that. It was an opportunity of a lifetime. But
How come the actual police that were on the streets of Havering all seem to be from Wales?
Well, you know, and in fact,
They choose the best.
they chose the best. We did have. We had David Powers assisting. We had Gwent. And we had South Wales Police up, and I saw a lot of the officers from South Wales.
They were all from Wales.
They were all coming up and supporting us. We had aid, what we call it, from all over the country to help the Metropolitan Police out doing the Olympics. But they did a fantastic job, and they had a really good time as well. So yeah, you are right. We did have aid coming in because we were on 12-hour shifts, and we had to balance the policing of the boroughs again with the torch. But we couldn't have done our job as primary escort if it wasn't for our colleagues. I mean, a very quick anecdotal piece of story. I was just coming out of Headingley in Leeds, and I was on the left-hand side of the road, and if I use the term crusty, do you know what I'm talking about? One of the great unwashed, came towards me. I just batted him off, and he had a bucket of water, and I took a bucket. But the torch bearer had just gone past, didn't see it. He was a bloke in his 70s. But the person in question was, I put him on the floor. And thankfully, I think it was South Yorkshire Police, were on him straight away. So I was able to arrest him and hoof him across to my colleagues, who then processed him for us. So that's how that worked. But yeah, we relied heavily on...
Did he survive?
Apparently he apologised to me, but I thought I went in charge. But there we go, there's another story.
I love these euphemisms like processing, but any other questions?
I have a feeling someone's here to arrest you.
We're done. Okay.
So I've done it.
And okay, come on, you give both the thanks. You take a seat there.
Thank you very much.
That's a shame that you didn't find the right pharmacy in. We really appreciate that you keep Upminster very safe. Since the new process of policing that has occurred in Upminster Crane. I think we're more safer in Upminster Crane. But besides that, all work that you've done and the charity you've done, I'm sure you fully deserve the MBE. And I would like everybody to show it.
Thank you, okay, thank you, Tim.
Very good.
Any other business?
Presented to me, you said?
Yes, you want a real one.
JACK. No, just JACK.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Just J-A-C-K.
Check now. After that,